In a marriage or in a relationship, it is very damaging, I think, if you don't talk about it. I believe that it can lead to a breaking point. And to have a healthy sex life, the one thing that is most fundamental is communication.
That's right, communication is the key. And for a healthier relationship, if you want to know how to talk about your sexual problems with your spouse or partner, then stick around because I'm going to get some tips and insight about communication about your sexual problems, like how do I tell my spouse I have ED? All this with my special guest today. She's a counseling psychologist with more than 20 years of experience counseling adults for depression, anxiety, and stress. She's also a relationship counselor for marriage and family issues. And in this episode, she shares some thoughts on how couples can deal with sexual problems like ED. If you're ready, it's time to man up with Sharan Kaur. Hi Sharon, how are you doing?
Hi, I'm good. Thank you. Thanks for having
Right,
me, Kevin.
thank you so much for being on the show. Well, Sharon, I want to begin with the importance of communicating about sexual problems with your partner, like erectile dysfunction. So, first up, how damaging is it if couples don't talk about their sexual problems, like ED?
Well, let me start by first saying it isn't something that is very easy to speak about. Yeah, it isn't even easy to talk about it in a general sort of setting, and it can get very intimidating. It can get highly personal, and people do have very mixed emotions about it. Now, in a marriage or in a relationship, I think it is, to answer the question very straightforwardly, it is very damaging, I think, if you don't talk about it. I believe that it can lead to a breaking point in the relationship. Whether it actually breaks a relationship or not has other factors that we need to kind of take into account. But if you choose to ignore something that is pretty much a fundamental element in a healthy relationship, then you are, as they say, ignoring an elephant in a room, right? And eventually it is going to come out in one way or the other. It is going to seep into the quality of the relationship, causing damage and causing a very low quality, and therefore, in different ways, the damage, the marriage or the relationship can break down. So, yeah, I think it is important that this conversation must be had. But before that, just two sort of points I want to highlight. Number one, ED, and we're just using this as a very general term, it can even include premature or delayed ejaculation, etc. Right? If you're just looking at it as a general erectile dysfunction, is usually not something that comes on suddenly. It's not like one day you have this great, or great healthy sex life continuously, and then one day you just can't and no longer can. It never happens like that, unless it's very, sorry, not never, it's highly unlikely, unless it's something very medical related, very physiological related. So it will come up, it will creep up into a relationship. It will start with things like loss of desire. It will start with not being able to maintain the erection for the whole duration of intercourse, etc., etc. The important point that I want to make here is that this is the time to recognize the problem. This is the time to recognize that, hey, I think we need to sit down and talk about this, because it is more difficult discussing it once it's become a full-on, head-on problem in that relationship. The other fact I want to just point out before we even go any deeper is that we are making this assumption that a couple's sex life is a healthy one, is a good one. And to have a healthy sex life, the one thing that is most fundamental is communication. Not even when you are having a good sexual health, sex life with your partner, you must be able to communicate what you want, what you don't want, how you like it, when you like it, which way, all sorts of different nuances about our individual comfort levels. So if you have open, confident, intimate conversation, then you should be able to have this equally open, intimate conversation about a negative issue or a problematic issue.
But that's exactly the problem because some couples are not open and are not comfortable communicating about sex. And when something like erectile dysfunction happens, and maybe there's some silent treatment going on, or maybe the cold shoulder, of course, disappointment for the man on his part, maybe. And so when they start to stay away and not communicate, suspicion may arise. Like maybe there's an affair going on, or maybe he doesn't love me anymore. I'm not attractive. Am I right in saying that?
One of the things that happens very immediately, whenever, even in a very early onset of ED, is that the partner feels unloved, unattractive, feels guilty for not being able to press the right buttons. There's a lot of other things that have no issue, no place in the dynamics. Yeah, they kind of blame someone or something, take that fault onto themselves. They become they're not satisfied, they're resentful, etc. So I think part of this, yes, exactly, becomes then the suspicion. You don't love me anymore, you're not interested in our relationship anymore, so therefore, and then they just join dots which are not joinable.
Yeah, that's right. Sometimes we are making up our own reality, and which is, probably not true at all and really far, far from the truth. But Sharon, for the man's part, when erectile dysfunction, when there's a failed attempt to get hard and to have good sex, it's very disappointing for the men. Most men would think that if the sex is going to be good, I have to be good. I have to be the one to provide it. There's a standard to measure up to. Are we putting too much pressure on ourselves?
This conditioning, this idea that man is sex, is power, and that gives them the I don't know, the status or the standing or this position, right?
Yeah.
Yes, maybe for hundreds and thousands of years that has been the case for different reasons, for procreation, for survival of the fittest, etc., etc. But let's be current. Let's talk about the situation we are in now. It really is no longer the case in most places, I would think. Yeah, generally people have evolved to be able to understand that women are equally sexual beings as well. We're not just here to be on the receiving end and to procreate. Yeah. We are here because we also want to be part of this process. We also are aware and comfortable with our sexuality and our desires, etc. So this whole concept of, if I'm a man, then I must be able to do this. And if I can't do this, therefore I'm not the kind of man that I want to be. Yeah, I think that whole notion needs to be dismantled. Now, how it is dismantled by, education, by awareness programs, etc., etc. Yeah, I suppose that's another discussion for another day.
Yeah.
Well, certainly, this is a very broad topic, and we'll have to cover other angles on other episodes. But Sharon, I spoke to a urologist in episode 1, Dr. Arun, and he said something that really struck me. He said not treating ED is a disservice to oneself and also to one's partner. So for most men, when we suffer some form of erectile dysfunction, we might think it's my problem, it's me. We're not thinking about how we're affecting our spouse. Maybe you could talk a bit about how important it is to approach this problem like erectile dysfunction as a couple.
Oh, totally important. In fact, I would think that if you are not involving the couple in this whole journey, in this whole process, then I think you've lost half the battle. It is not a single person situation, right? It is something that affects the couple. It is something that needs to be dealt with as an us, not as a you or me. Not as individual here. Now, of course, having spoken to a urologist and having that conversation before, we know that a large number of ED issues are physiological, they are medical based, right? And so the first thing you need to do is to sort of exclude all those things, to get all those things checked up, and everything needs to be on good scale there. Don't forget, a healthy lifestyle is also important. Now, although ED can affect people from any ages, generally we find people who are a little bit older, maybe in their 50s onwards, would be more would succumb more to ED than the younger group. Again, a very general statement, nothing medical about it. And you find that lifestyle becomes a big issue, and lifestyle meaning obesity, overweight, smoking, alcohol, those kind of things. So as much as you may not have medical issues per se, but yeah, maybe 2 glasses of wine may help you feel a little bit loosen up, etc. But after 2 bottles of wine, there's no way your body is going to function the way you want it to function. It's going to be the total opposite, in fact. So while you might feel very powerful and happy and gregarious, your body is going to tell you otherwise. So these lifestyle factors, I think, play a lot when it comes to people in a more mature age group, right? So I think dealing with this as a couple is if you want a success from this, from dealing with this, from overcoming this problem, then deal with it as a couple, not one-on-one.
And in our previous episode, we spoke to consultant psychologist Dr. Philip George, and he did mention in his practice when men with ED come to seek therapy, there are better results and better outcomes when they come with their partner or spouse. So that's a good point to take away. So Sharan, let's get into it. How does a man with erectile dysfunction start this conversation with his wife or his partner? As you know, this is kind of sensitive and it may make him look weak.
Before I answer that question straight away, I want to just backtrack to what I said earlier. We are assuming that in the first place, this couple has a good, healthy relationship which includes good sex, good communication. Now, that assumption is not actually a fair one to make, because I can say majority of couples out there don't. People, individuals, we may be living in this decade, this era where we are so open about so many things. We may be open about talking about sex in general. We may be open about using the words like penis or vagina in general, but we won't talk about more intimate things that are more personal to us. So yes, we may be comfortable to a certain level, but still there are many couples who have been together for many, many years and still have very minimal conversation. They still have, very reluctant or very embarrassed or feel ashamed to say that they would like certain things certain way, or they don't like certain things the way it is being done. And they feel guilty to say that. Both parties, it's not just men or women, equally both parties. A lot of men and women are not even comfortable with their own desires, their own needs, their own likes, their own dislikes, their own even little kinkiness,
Is it still back to conditioning, or is it an Asian thing?
Actually, no, I wouldn't just sort of make a broad statement to say it's an Asian thing. I think some cultures are a bit closed, some cultures are a bit more open, but the general reluctance to be so personal, I think, is pretty much across the board. There are many people who seem very open about their approach, their attitude, but will not tell their partners that, there are minor things that they like, or they won't tell their partners what fantasies they may have, or what imagination goes through their minds when they're having sex, etc., etc. They may feel it's wrong to say, I fantasize of Brad Pitt or Shah Rukh Khan, when in true life it doesn't mean I'm cheating on you, nowhere close. It has no,
because they were an argument might break out.
You're absolutely right. No, you're absolutely right. Whereas if we were open and we were, really comfortable talking about this, then that should not be an issue, and it cannot be an issue. And I'm just making things, because this is, radio and to the general public, I'm making things very kosher and very minimal. But as you can imagine, there are so many little things which people just find it too embarrassing to discuss. So no, I wouldn't say it's a Asian thing at all. I think people need to move towards being more comfortable to talk about what is important to them.
Right. And Sharon, when is a good time to bring up this conversation? When should we talk about this with our wife or partner?
It is to be addressed early on. It shouldn't be left till it actually is a real problem where basically, 50% of the time you're unable to have fulfilling sex. So usually when it comes to, I think, if please correct me if I'm wrong, I think the medical percentage they use is 30%. If 30% of the time you're unable to maintain and to have and maintain an erection, then we're looking at an erectile dysfunction. My suggestion is deal with this early on. Deal with it in a very conducive, very friendly, very loving manner. And chances are it's not immediately after the failed attempt. At the point that it hasn't happened, you kind of just comfort each other, cuddle, some form of intimacy, some form of reassurance, and then forget about it. Have the conversation when you're having coffee, sitting downstairs at your kitchenette, sitting there and say, hey, you know what? We need to talk about it. We need to talk about it. We need to do something about this. Okay. And I think it might help if the woman brings this up, or the other partner brings this up. It could be a gay situation as well, right? Could be. So it is important if the other partner brings this up and says, we need to talk about it. We need to make sure that we can address this in the right manner. Let us take some measures to overcome the problem. That, I think, is the only and the best starting way to get into a conversation.
It's interesting you said that to have this conversation at the coffee table and it's not in the bedroom.
No, because the bedroom creates a lot of expectations. And it is definitely not the point after you have attempted and failed and feeling very rejected. At that time, you just need some assurances. You just need to feel a little bit, you are already feeling guilty. You are already feeling like, rejected or dejected rather, and you don't want that time to be an issue. All you can say at that point is, hey, you know what? Let's just cuddle and we'll talk about this tomorrow, or we'll talk about this, the next opportunity we can. So give that assurance, leave it, drop it, enjoy the rest of the evening or time. And then in a very non-challenging, very relaxed manner, approach it almost like you're approaching any other problem. Like you're approaching, okay, how are we going to pay our mortgage for next month if we don't have our bonus, Approach it like that. As in, look, we have an issue. The issue is going to affect our relationship. We need to see what we can do. And if you need to take out a piece of paper, put down your strategies, put down the way it needs to be. See, it's so unthreatening like that.
Yeah.
It's so together. It's like as if we are sitting on a management board meeting trying to figure out a problem that we need to address. That confidence will build up.
And you did mention about addressing this as early as possible. I suppose the good thing is that if it's not erectile dysfunction, but it just may be other related causes like stress or something, that is also something that couples should talk about. And maybe this is an opportunity for them to talk about it, right?
Absolutely, totally. In fact, it might even be a real eye-opener because then you realize that maybe there was a medical issue that needed to be dealt with, which you didn't realize the impact, So then by saying, okay, let's go together to see our GP, or let's go together to see the urologist, etc., might actually just solve a problem which may have become a much bigger problem if it wasn't discussed. Now, let's say if it's not something medical, but something psychological, then yes, how work has affected. Maybe it's important that we switch off our gadgets before we go to bed and not from gadget to trying to be a lover. You can't just switch on. It's not like a switch that you can flick on and off. So these are the things that you want to just kind of address in a very non-threatening, non-judgmental way.
Now, Sharon, I suppose when men start to seek treatment for erectile dysfunction, when they go to see a urologist or a doctor, there's some sort of assessment or basic workup that needs to be done. Do you recommend that the man go with his wife or his partner?
I think the first thing, the most important thing about having your partner with you is to give the right history. It's so easy that when you are there alone, you just give the history that you want to give, or, kind of skew it to the way you are comfortable, when
Yeah,
actually that's not the
it's
right
just that
thing to
one time,
do.
doctor.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, I don't think I have a problem, but somebody, my wife thinks or my partner thinks. Absolutely. So getting the right history is the key, is the absolute key. And having your partner there might actually make the whole difference. Well, at least save a bit of time.
Well, that's true, and I'm sure the doctor or urologist would also advise men seeking treatment with ED to come with their wife or with their partner to get an exact idea on how to deal with the problem. Well, Sharon, for couples who have come to terms with their sexual limitations, I'm sure it's not the end of the world. How can couples still have a healthy, intimate sexual relationship or sex life?
We have to look at sex in a broader way. We have to look at it in a more intimate way, in a more that it's not necessarily just one act of it. So yes, when someone who's dealing with erectile dysfunction, then the couple need to consider what are the better ways that we can, or what other ways we can look into it. And obviously, manual stimulation, oral stimulation, just sort of a lot of cuddling, a lot of foreplay, a lot of touching, a lot of confidence building while they are trying to overcome the problem would be very important. Again, if you don't have open communication, if you're not comfortable with who you are, it's very hard to get there. So there's so many things, so many levels sort of that you need to overcome before you can come to that point. Otherwise, you are going to resign to just being roommates. And, that's probably not the best direction to go in. So, look, if you are a much, much older couple, you've had 35, 40 years, together, fine, maybe you can resign yourselves to saying, well, all right, it's not going to be the way it was. But if you're a more dynamic couple, younger and still very active and still very aware of your own sexual needs, then your relationship is going to find it very difficult to survive. Now, there's one thing that I would like to say, and I know a lot of people have different viewpoints to this, that men can actually have an orgasm without an ejaculation and without actually maintaining erection. So there is a point where they can sort of rise to a point of orgasm and then have that satisfaction. It is definitely nowhere comparable to the real thing, to an actual ejaculation, but it's not insignificant either. So maybe that's an important point for people to know, an important point for couples to work towards.
Yep, something to take into consideration, definitely. And for our viewers, I'm sure not all of them are men with ED. Some of our viewers or listeners tuning in might be the partner or the wife of someone who has ED. So maybe, Sharon, you can talk a bit about how the partner can be supportive to men with erectile dysfunction.
If you have not been as open-minded as you would like to be, if you've not been as openly communicative as you have been before, I think this is a good time to start practicing, right? To start picking up on these issues and just start talking about what is important for you sexually, how you would like to be with your partner sexually, and then allow both parties a dialogue. It has to be a dialogue about how I would like my partner to be, and allow my partner to tell me how he would like me to be, so that we can start learning how to meet each other's needs, give each other what we would like. And sometimes just taking away that stress, just knowing that we can have this kind of conversation may allow for a better sex life already, So it is, I think if there's one thing I would like the partner to remember, is not to take this as a personal attack, not to take this as if there is something automatically wrong with you and that's why your partner is not able to do this. No, take it as something that we as a couple need to deal with together. So there is some part that you need to play, there is some part that I need to play. What you need to do will be different from what I need to do, but we are both willing, ready, and able to do what we need to do. So we'll need some guidance. Now, whether you get the guidance from a doctor, whether from a reliable source on the internet or read a book, etc., it doesn't matter where you get the information from. Try something, because doing nothing is not an option. Something caused the ED. Doing nothing means you're just ignoring that. And ignoring it is just giving it more space, right, to grow.
Yeah.
If it's a temporary thing, as I said, if it's under the 30%, under the 25% occasion, if it's a temporary thing, fine, we can understand, illness or job stress or financial stress, or even just couples having a bad time and, not feeling close. Yeah, that's fine. Then maybe ignoring it or letting it slide or dealing with the actual issue and not putting it onto performance anxiety issue is all right. You can let it slide. But once you know it's a little bit more than that, it is something that it actually needs to be dealt with, then you got to take the bull by its horns.
And Sharan, would you know of any support groups for men with ED?
Actually, existing support groups on this particular element, I don't believe so. But I do know there are support groups for sex addicts, love addicts, where they do tend to talk about sexual dysfunction as well. But it won't come in the form of dealing with any particular problem, I suppose marriage therapy, marriage counseling would include, learning how to have a healthier sex life. Yes, definitely. But on that same note, most marriage therapists are not sex therapists. They may include some of it in their work, but they're not specifically sex therapists. I think there are only a handful, and mainly they are in the public sector or in academia. So you need to find a therapist that is very comfortable talking about these things. A lot of therapists are not. They're not. They're comfortable at a certain level. They're comfortable, just talking about having a healthy sex life, how important it is, but may not be to the detail and to the nitty-gritty, which is probably something you probably need to shop around to get there. So no, I don't know of any support groups, and if anybody does, can correct me. I'll be happy to have this information. Seriously, very happy to have it.
Well, Man Up Malaysia is not just about getting the little guy to man up, but it's also to create some awareness and to encourage men to be more open, to be more communicative with your wife or your partner, to talk about your sexual problems, to have a healthier relationship. Sharan, would you like to add anything to that?
I think exactly what you said. We must allow for awareness. We must bring awareness to everyone, as many people as possible. We must bring that awareness in a very comfortable, conducive manner. And we must sort of deal with it, as quick as possible, and not wait for these situations to become more and more complicated and more complex in our lives. All right. With just about any problem, if we can tackle it earlier, the chances of success is always better. So feel free to go to the professionals, whether it's your medical doctor, whether it's your mental health professional, to do something about any issues that you may have in your relationship.
Thank you very much, Sharan Kaur, for being on the show. Certainly helpful advice and insights there for couples who are dealing with this problem. Both of them are dealing with it, right?
Absolutely. Totally. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you for having me.
That was Sharan Kaur, counselling psychologist and relationship counsellor, helping us to communicate about our sexual problems like erectile dysfunction to our spouse or partner. Well, Man Up Malaysia is not just about creating awareness about men's health issues, but we also want to encourage men to take little steps, maybe one at a time, to get healthier. So if you're interested, you want to join our community, just go to our website, manupmalaysia.com, and take a health pledge. Yes, pledge to do just one thing better to improve your health. I'm Kevin Francis for Man Up Malaysia, encouraging men to get healthier, one pledge at a time. See you in the next episode.